Good evening, everyone. We're going to give people some time to join us. We have a number of attendees for this meeting, but welcome. We'll give us a few minutes and we'll get started. Hi there. If you're just joining us, we're just going to give people a couple of minutes to join. We have a large group of attendees and we'll get started shortly.
Hey, Catherine, this is Carson. Can you hear me?
Okay, I think we're in a good place. That's 3 minutes. That should be a good number of amount of time to let people join us. We seem to have reached a pretty high number. Good evening. I'm going to get started. My name is Mary Catherine Gibbs. I'm the land use attorney for the HRP Group, the owner of the PRGS site. I want to welcome you to our 19th community engagement event that HRP has organized to discuss the redevelopment of the PRGS site. Tonight, we'll be discussing where we are in the city's development process, including the recently announced proposal for TIF financing, but most importantly, we'll be reviewing the designs for the first two blocks and the two publicly accessible open spaces on the site. Before we begin, I know everybody is pretty familiar with Zoom, but we wanted to review some Zoom matters before we get started. Audience members, on Zoom, please note you're muted on both audio and camera. We do this to ensure that we're able to efficiently review the materials and answer all your questions. If you're interested in asking questions or making comments, we ask that you either submit those questions through the Q&A function you should be seeing at the bottom of your screen. If you're not seeing the Q&A function, hit the three dots that say more underneath and you'll see the Q&A in that. Um, or you can raise your hand in the question and answer period that will take place after we've finished our presentation. Due to the tremendous number of attendees tonight, for those people who are asking questions verbally, we ask that you limit yourself to one question and do so in a respectful time frame and manner so that as many people as possible get the opportunity to have their questions and comments addressed. If you want to submit your question in writing, you can click on the Q&A icon where you will then be prompted to type and submit your questions. We will try to log all questions on our end. The chat function will not work. We'll be gathering questions received during the meeting and we'll answer as many as we can during the Q&A session. If we are not able to answer your question during the meeting due to time limitations, we will share the answer along with all questions asked on our website, www.hrpalx.com, where the answers to all questions asked during community meetings are posted. We're also recording this meeting. Excuse me, we're recording this meeting, and we will post that recording on our website as well. This meeting is only scheduled for an hour, but because of the overwhelming response, we're going to go to 7:30 if we need to. Just wanted to make sure people knew that. As has been true of all of our community engagement events as part of this process, there's plenty of opportunity for community participation tonight. We're here to listen to your comments and answer your questions to the greatest extent we can. And we'll be covering a lot of information and we'll have plenty of time for questions. We can go back to a slide during the Q&A session if you'd like. Again, thank you all for being here tonight and we'll go ahead and get started. For you who have your hand raised, we're going to have our question and answer session at the end of the presentation. So feel free to put your question into the Q&A, and if there's something we can help you with, we will do so. Next slide. Great. Here's our agenda for tonight. We're going to talk about the process to date. We're going to talk about phase one, the overview of the open spaces in the public realm. We're going to talk about Block B, and we're going to talk about Block C. We're going to talk about the TIF proposal that you probably all have heard about that was in the news last week. the deconstruction planning, and community partnerships. Next slide. If you've attended any of our other events, you have seen a version of this slide. You can see a summary of how we've reached this point so far in the darker gray to the left. We've had a number of community meetings and events related to this phase of the development, including presentations to several Alexandria boards and commissions. We've received the unanimous endorsement of several city committees and commissions, including the Urban Design Advisory Committee, the Parks and Rec Commission, and the Waterfront Commission. We've advanced the designs for the first blocks and open spaces by making their completeness submissions for 4 of these DSUPs, blocks B and C, and 2 open spaces. All of this is moving us towards a review of these plans by the Planning Commission and City Council in June of this year. Next slide. We are so excited to be discussing the advancement of the plans for the first 2 buildings and the open spaces in and around the site. But we're here as we move through the third facet of the development review process. The first was the Coordinated Development District Concept Plan, which was set the table for what is envisioned for the site and provided the overall plan for the levels of development, including the uses, heights, amounts of open spaces, blocks, and initial roadways. That was approved in July of 2022. Each step builds on the previous one. The second step was the Infrastructure Development Site Plan, or IDSP, that was approved in June of 2023, and it laid out the roadway network and utilities necessary to support this development. The third step is now, where we're designing the buildings and the open spaces on the site. We discussed both of these at different community meetings in November of 2023, March of 2024, and June of 2025. Tonight, we'll provide an update to those plans. An important public benefit for this development is the open space improvements in and around the site. Each building and each open space has its own development special use permit, or a DSUP, and we have 2 separate DSUPs for each of those open spaces. Next slide. The CDD concept plan created a framework for the redevelopment while preserving a certain level of flexibility and requiring certain on-site public improvements to be delivered depending on the phasing of the redevelopment. The CDD identified what comes with which, what we used to call phases, but we now group by blocks, particularly what open space comes with which block. HRP is applying the CDD framework in the first blocks of this development. They're proposing to build the first 2 blocks, blocks B and C, as I said earlier, and the open spaces, the waterfront open space and the rail corridor open space towards those blocks. The remainder of the development will come later. Now I'm going to turn this over to Melissa Schrock of the HRP Group.
Thanks, Mary Catherine. Good evening, everybody. We're so excited that so many of our neighbors have joined us this evening to get the update. I'm Melissa Schrock, and I lead the mixed-use development team at HRP. Corey, sorry, you can go to the next slide, please. As many of you may know, HRP specializes in remediating and reinvigorating former industrial sites across the country, like this one here in Alexandria. PRGS is actually the 5th coal-fired power plant that we will remediate, deconstruct, and transform. At PRGS, we'll be transforming the site into a welcoming waterfront district with a dynamic mix of uses that include housing and commercial, retail, arts and cultural space, pedestrian and bicycle connections, and significant open space for the community to enjoy. During our CDD phase, as Mary Catherine just reviewed, we developed 4 guiding principles for this project through our many conversations with community members, city staff, and local leaders. You can see those 4 principles here, and they are integrate the site, re-knit it into the existing urban fabric of Alexandria, connect people to the waterfront, remove the barrier that the power plant has been in this section of the waterfront for so many years, provide meaningful open space, and you're going to hear a lot about that this evening. And the last one is to create a sustainable new place, which we'll touch on as well. Next, please. HRP is really grateful for the years of advocacy from the community that led to the shuttering of the power plant, allowing us to acquire it with a vision to transform it from a fossil fuel-based facility into a sustainable new district. As documented in our approved Coordinated Sustainability Strategy, or CSS, which was the first of its kind in the city, the project will include important resiliency improvements for stormwater management and on-site energy generation, as well as the creation of a significant number of construction and permanent jobs. Next. Additionally, this project is unique, both in terms of some of the challenges of redeveloping a site like this, as well as the public benefits it's able to deliver. We'll be undertaking the abatement and deconstruction of the plant itself and environmental remediation of the site to enable redevelopment, and that's going to start as soon as next year. Significant affordable housing units will be provided on site. Over 10 acres of public open space will be created or improved. And of course, new roadway, utility, bicycle, pedestrian, and bus infrastructure will be built as part of the project. Over a period of about 30 years, the project is anticipated to generate about $770 million in new tax revenue for the city. And all told, this project represents about a $2 billion private investment into the site. Now I'm going to turn over to Michelle. Michelle?
Thanks, Melissa. Hi, my name is Michelle Beeman Chang, and I'm Vice President of Mixed Use at HRP. We can go to the next slide, Corey. Wonderful. So HRP's approach for incorporating affordable housing across this redevelopment is delivered through three key components. The first are the set-aside units, which ensure the affordable units are incorporated across residential buildings throughout the new development. Secondarily, a voluntary contribution, which ranges based on the product mix across the site. It's a range of 8 to 11 million in 2022 dollars. This will be paid by block and will help fund affordable housing initiatives, which includes our third key component, which is a unique, dedicated affordable housing building that will be developed using an innovative public-private partnership approach with the city and a future affordable housing partner. This will be constructed in phase 2 and leverage multiple affordable housing financing sources. HRP is proud to create housing opportunities for individuals and families across a range of income levels as part of this transformational redevelopment. Next slide. Here we go. Building on the rich culture of Old Town and Old Town North neighborhoods, the project will establish a vibrant arts and cultural district that celebrates both the history and future of these neighborhoods in multiple ways. First, through the creation of 30,000 square feet of dedicated cultural space, half of which will be subsidized through the Arts Bonus Density Program. Second, the new district will be the northern terminus of the Arts and Cultural Corridor that extends from the Torpedo Factory and links Old Town and Old Town North. Third, the Historic Interpretation Plan and Public Art Plan have been comprehensively incorporated into the open space programming that you'll see later, and will continue to involve with community feedback that will occur later this year. Included in these plans are opportunities to reuse existing site elements that will remind residents and visitors alike of the site's unique heritage and activation as an arts district. I'm excited to hand this off to Siobhan. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Siobhan Steen, Director of Mixed Use Development for HRP Group and based right here in Alexandria. Next slide, please. We are so fortunate to be working with a world-class design team. Our architects, Gensler, Handel, and SCB, along with our landscape architect, OJB, are collaborating closely to bring this vision to life with the highest standards of design and placemaking. You'll hear directly from several members of the design team tonight, and we also have additional consultants on the call who can help and answer any questions that might come up. Next. Next slide, please. Oh. As mentioned earlier, we have submitted 4 development special use permits for the first phase of the project. Blocks B and C and the waterfront and rail corridor open spaces. These applications are scheduled to go before the Planning Commission and City Council in June. This site will be developed from south to north, beginning with blocks B and C. Throughout the DSUP process, we've continued to refine the phasing plan in coordination with city staff. As shown here, each development block will be delivered together with its open space adjacent, ensuring that public amenities come online as the neighborhood grows. Next slide, please. Zooming in on this first phase, blocks B and C are located at the southern end of the site closest to Old Town North. In this image, the Potomac River is at the top of the frame, and the waterfront open space creates a continuous landscape from the river's edge and the Mount Vernon Trail, connecting to the new streets and sidewalks on site. Access to these blocks will be provided through the extension of North Fairfax Street into the site, along with the new Road A, which runs from this intersection at North Fairfax all the way to Slater's Lane. Blocks B and C are mixed-use sites. Each parcel includes an active ground floor retail, a for-sale condominium building, and a rental apartment building. You'll be hearing more shortly about the architectural and landscape design for each of these components. Next, please. In addition to our commitment to high-quality design, as was mentioned before, the CDD Master Plan established Alexandria's first coordinated sustainability strategy, or CSS. This strategy outlines a series of green features that will be incorporated throughout the site, including a minimum LEED Silver certification for all buildings, on-site renewable energy through rooftop solar panels, water conservation measures such as low-flow fixtures, and full electrification of all building mechanical systems. These commitments reflect HRP's dedication to environmental stewardship and long-term resilience. Next slide, please. With that, I'll hand things over to Simon Beer, who will walk you through our open space plans.
Thanks, Siobhan. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here tonight. My name is Simon Beer. I'm a landscape architect working on the Potomac River Generating Station project here in Alexandria. Tonight, I want to walk you through what I believe is the most exciting component of the entire project, and that's the open space. What we are proposing here is not just a collection of open space, it's really an integrated network of green spaces, trails, public amenities that will fundamentally reconnect Old Town North to the Potomac River. We're going to be covering the overall open space vision and walk you through the waterfront plan from south to north, and then move into the rail corridor open space and touch on our historic interpretation and art strategies before we wrap up. Next slide. So to put this into context, we will start with the big picture, and this slide shows the open space network that we are proposing along with existing parks Alexandria residents already know and love. The PRGS project will contribute approximately 11 acres of combined open space, some of that being off-site and some on-site. And when you compare that to parks like Founders Park at 4.8 or Orinoco at 5.6, you can start to appreciate the scale of what we're talking about here. And the key design principle here is connectivity. We're not designing these as isolated pockets of green. We're thinking of them as seamless, continuous public realm that links waterfront to the interior of the site and ultimately to the surrounding neighborhood and trail network. So this is urban planning at a neighborhood scale, designing how people actually move through the space and experience it. Next slide. So this is the comprehensive open space plan for the site, and it tells you a lot about our design philosophy guiding the project. You can see two primary systems, the waterfront open space running along the Potomac and the rail corridor open space running diagonally through the site. There's also some land to the north and along the Potomac that falls on National Park Service jurisdiction. And that's all subject to NPS review and a NEPA process. Our team has been working collaboratively with the National Park Service to ensure that we are designing this as a natural extension of that landscape with no jarring transitions or hard edges. So the goal from a landscape architecture standpoint is to create a green connection along the perimeter of the development, something that will orient people, provide ecological value through native plantings and stormwater management, and gives the community a real genuine sense of place. Next slide. So the waterfront open space is organized into 3 zones, a north, central, and south waterfront. And each has their own character and program. And this was an important design strategy for us. Rather than one undifferentiated park experience, we're creating a sequence, a landscape journey, where each zone offers something distinct as you move along the water's edge. When you think of a good urban street, it has rhythm, it has variety, moments of energy, and moments of calm. And that's what we're thinking about for the waterfront park along the Potomac. Next slide. So starting at the south of the waterfront, this is an entry point to experience from the south end of the site. The feature include a generous pedestrian walkway along the water. Alongside that, an event lawn that can host movies. There's also a water feature that serves as a welcoming landmark, integrated seating throughout the landscape, and connections to the Mount Vernon Trail, which is one of the most heavily used multi-use trails in the entire region. From an urban design perspective, that is about creating a memorable front door to the waterfront and a kind of civic open space that invites people to linger and enjoy the space. Next slide. Along the promenade, we arrive at the waterfront overlook. This rendering gives you a sense of the experience. Generally, seating areas that are framed by mature trees, native plantings, and unobstructed views to the Potomac River. This sits along what is at the edge of what is currently NPS land. So that final design is subject to approval and review by the National Park Service. But the concept is clear. Quiet, contemplative space that you can sit and watch the river. And these kind of spaces are really invaluable in these urban environments, places to recover and find respite that make a neighborhood more livable. Next slide. And this slide will focus on waterfront access, specifically how people are getting down to the water's edge. One of the core challenges with a site like this is grade change. The existing topography creates a natural separation between the development and the river. And our solution is integrated terrace seating, cascading stone terraces that serve both as seating and as accessible pathways down to the water. You can see native planting throughout, which serves both ecologically and aesthetically for the landscape. And critically, there's an accessible connection to the Mount Vernon Trail, ensuring the space is equitable and welcoming for all users. Next slide. The central waterfront is the heart of the waterfront experience. This zone includes 6 key program elements, including the Mount Vernon Trail bridge replacement, pump house, public viewpoint, native gardens, an accessible walkway down to the water, a shade structure with swings, and the Great Lawn. The existing pump house is a historically significant structure on this site, and rather than demolishing it, we are proposing to activate it as a public amenity, a viewpoint with potential for food and retail, also along this water's edge. So this adaptive reuse at its best is honoring the industrial heritage of the site, while also giving it new life. Next slide. The Great Lawn is the centerpiece of the central waterfront. When you look at this rendering, I want you to imagine on a Saturday, families, dogs, cyclists coming off the Mount Vernon Trail, food vendors, perhaps a concert on the raised stage. This is the kind of activated public space that defines these great waterfronts. The design includes flexible seating, the stage and overlook and swings. These elements are both functional and playful. The lawn itself is sized to accommodate a large community event while remaining intimate enough for that everyday use. And of course, views out to the Potomac are preserved throughout. Next slide. Here you can see the shade structure in a little bit more detail. A contemporary canopy that provides shelter and a gathering spot adjacent to the Great Lawn. The stone block terraces along the water's edge frame views and create additional informal seating zones. These kind of structures are really critical in public open space. Shade and shelter extend the usability of that outdoor space throughout the year and create a more comfortable destination rather than just a place to pass through. Next slide. Accessibility is a core value of this project and certainly not an afterthought. The idea of the accessible pathway adjacent to it here and the idea of the kind of informal shade structure that we are sitting next to, you can start to see the idea of the stone blocks as well. These kind of integrations are incredibly important. Next slide. And you can see this native planting along the pathway, that accessible connection to the Mount Vernon Trail, the integrated seating that works for everyone. Good design here makes accessibility invisible and just integrates it right in. And so that's really the intent here. Next slide. The Pump House Trail connection is a dynamic moment for the waterfront sequence. A cascading stair flanked by rich native planting, a bold mural on the pump house wall, creating a memorable moment. You can see the design accommodating for both pedestrians on foot and wheelchair users, with the grade transition handled thoughtfully throughout. It's also that opportunity for that public art along the architecture and the existing pump house. What would otherwise be a blank space, so adding some rich and public realm art opportunities. Next slide. The Mount Vernon Trail is definitely one of Alexandria's great state assets, and this project represents a significant opportunity to enhance that. At the pump house, we are proposing a generous expansion of the trail with the boardwalk along the water's edge, outdoor seating, areas for cyclists, and improved connectivity for pedestrians and those cyclists. And those of you who use the Mount Vernon Trail regularly, there will be a notable and welcomed improvement, a place to stop, rest, enjoy the river rather than simply riding past. And the best news is no more cage or blind spots around the corner of this existing pump house. Next slide. At the top of the pump house is a rooftop over. This is an elevated public terrace with unobstructed views to the Potomac River. This is a remarkable amenity, and very places in Old Town offer this kind of elevated river view and make it publicly accessible. So it's really a meaningful asset to the community. And again, we're designing this in conjunction with the National Park Service and subject to their approval and review process, but are committed to working collaboratively with them to realize this vision. Next. So moving to the waterfront north, the character of the landscape sort of shifts a little bit. Here we're in a wooded peninsula of NPS land, and the design takes on more of a naturalistic quality, tree canopy, connections to the Mount Vernon Trail, and something that's really exciting, a personal non-motorized watercraft launch. That launch itself would open up the Potomac in a new way for Alexandria residents. Just imagine launching your kayak from this site and paddling down to Old Town. That's the kind of amenity, really, that transforms how a community relates back to its waterfront and a big purpose of this waterfront open space. Next slide. This rendering shows the Mount Vernon connection, minimum of 12-foot wide boardwalk, a stair that comes down from the development to that personal watercraft launch. The design is clean and functional, prioritizing movement while maintaining water views. This infrastructure investment will pay dividends for decades in terms of how people can access and enjoy that waterfront. Next slide. We're going to look at this waterfront personal watercraft launch from the water, looking back towards the site. And you can see the Great Lawn in the background, the public viewpoint, the retail patio, the Mount Vernon Trail bridge expansion. and the launch, of course, itself with a gangway that reaches out towards the water. So this aerial perspective really communicates the beach in fully activated, publicly accessible waterfront that connects Alexandria's community to the Potomac in ways that it simply hasn't to date, especially on this site. Next slide. So we're going to shift our view to the other major open space system, the rail corridor open space. And this linear park runs diagonally through the interior of the site and organized into 3 zones, north, central, and south, plus a stretch called the Pepco liner adjacent to the existing utility infrastructure. Rail corridor parks, of course, have become a hallmark of thoughtful design in many different places, like the High Line in New York or the Atlanta Beltline. The idea is to take underutilized industrial land and transform it into vibrant, connected open space. And that's exactly what we're doing here. So on the next slide, we're going to talk about the southern area, and that rail corridor south is the gateway into the rail corridor from the southern end of the site. Next slide, please, if you don't mind. Key elements of this include a repurposed guardhouse, an existing piece that's there today, as one of the historic structures on this site. It's going to anchor this open space, along with a game court for activities like ping pong and bocce, a flexible lawn for informal recreation, and a gateway plaza that marks the entry into the development. The adaptive reuse of the guardhouse is really particularly meaningful, as it's a tangible link to the industrial heritage of the site, while making a great community amenity within this section of the rail corridor park. This rendering of the Gateway Plaza on the next slide shows the repurposed guardhouse in the background there. Flexible lawn for relaxation, the games court with cornhole and other activities. We also are including an industrial art referencing back to the site's history. And Block A, of course, Block B of the development framing the space beyond. So this is really what we're thinking of: placemaking and creating a space with genuine identity, something that has character, that reflects where it came from. And the industrial aesthetic of the materials, the art, and the preserved structures all work together to tell the site's story. Next slide. The guardhouse plaza takes on a little bit more of an intimate European plaza character, and the canopy of trees with string lights overhead, movable seating that allows the space to flex for different uses and games. Really be a great amenity to the community. Think of a space that works great on a Tuesday afternoon as well as it does on a Saturday evening. Movable seating is really an important design choice here, thinking about allowing people to make the space their own, and that kind of adaptability is really what makes a public space great. Next slide. The central rail corridor introduces a family-oriented programming. Here you have a sensory garden, a passive lawn, and the centerpiece of this zone, the kids' play area, which includes a water feature, a top lot, and a larger play structure. In our design process with HRP, we have been talking about design for all ages and all abilities. The sensory garden serves young children with some sensory sensitivities. The passive lawn serves for adults and teenagers. The play areas serve for families with kids. And when the park works for everyone, I think it really becomes a true community space. Next slide. The kids' play area is designed to be a genuine destination, not just a standard playground, but something that's engaging, imaginative, and encourages exploration. You can see natural play elements, a water feature with interactive stones, a large play tower beyond with a slide, and even a scooter track. Next slide. So the design is going to use natural materials, timber, stone, and gravel, along with safety surfacing that connects kids back to nature within this urban setting. So research is consistently showing us that children benefit immensely from this access to nature-inspired play, and this design delivers on that in accessibility, safety, and excitement. Next slide. The rail corridor north is the most active zone, I would say, of the rail corridor, designed for sports, fitness, and recreation. The program includes a seating grove, sports courts for basketball and pickleball, fitness stations, a recreation lawn large enough for soccer or other sports, and a dog park. From an urban planning standpoint, the mix of active uses here within the northern section certainly makes sense, set back from residential portions of the site, while also making this easily accessible to the broader neighborhood. A dog park and sports courts are consistently among the most requested amenities in the community, especially through our community input process, and we've certainly prioritized both here. Next slide. The sports court is designed for multi-use. You can see the pickleball lines and basketball lines, allowing to serve for different user groups at different times. We include a generous entry with perimeter netting, the tree planting, providing shade along the edges. The multi-sports courts are a smart investment here for the public space that maximize the value of the footprint while ensuring the space stays active for all. Next slide. The recreational lawn gives you a sense of how all the pieces kind of come together here in this rendering. You can see the sports courts to the left, the kids play within the background, and this open lawn in the foreground with the soccer goal. The tree canopy frames the spaces and creates a sense of enclosure without feeling confined. This is a design technique that we've been using and really intentional here along the edge of this field. Next slide. The dog park deserves its own mention for sure because it goes well beyond just a regular fenced enclosure. You can see mounds, a dog tunnel, and reclaimed wood climbing features within the confined space. The space is designed both for dogs and their owners. The topography featuring engagement for dogs with additional seating areas along the perimeter for their owners. It's a small detail, but it reflects the broader philosophy, I think, of the design team and HRP, where every element of this open space is designed with care and intention and implemented here within this rendering. Next slide. Mentioning the Pepco liner, it's really an open space that runs along this existing utility infrastructure, demonstrating that it can become an opportunity as well. Rather than treating the substation as something to hide, we're using some native plantings and artistic screening along this, and also creating a flexible gathering space to the north. The linear strip of green is going to actually complete an open space loop around the development, ensuring that pedestrians can circulate around the entire site through connected green space. And that kind of connectivity is fundamental to the urban design qualities here of the entire development. Next slide. Before I close, I wanted to briefly touch on our historic interpretation plan because it fundamentally has shaped how we have approached the design of all the spaces. The site has a rich and complex history from indigenous occupation before European contact to the founding of Alexandria in 1749. This now industrial area has found abandonment and the growth of invasives that have really marked the beginning of the site's current condition. So good urban design doesn't erase history, it reveals it. And our goal is to embed that story into the site and into the physical fabric of the open space through materials, structures, and art. Next slide. So across the site, we have identified specific locations and opportunities for that interpretation. That includes the repurposing of structures like the guardhouse and the pump house, educational signage, the reuse of industrial relics, as well as art pieces throughout, and really thinking on the elements of textures, words, and forms to help to inform the interpretation of the history here on site. And next slide is finally the art plan. And public art, of course, is going to be woven throughout the open space at several different locations, reflecting the history and character of the site. Includes things like the Pepco screen, the Central Plaza sculpture, pump house murals, and stone features that reflect the natural setting along the Potomac River. And of course, there'll be several more meetings on this. We're treating art not as decoration, but as a civic commitment to Alexandria. And it has been such a pleasure to walk through some of these design ideas and thinking with you. And with that, I'll pass it along.
Thank you, Simon. Good evening, everyone. My name is Devin Patterson. I'm a principal at SCB. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're excited to walk you through the progress on the Block B design, which is a key site shaping the future of the district. Next slide, please. Over the past year, our team has been working through phase one of the redevelopment. Block B plays a central role in creating a vibrant, walkable, and welcoming environment for residents, visitors, and the broader community. Block B is designed around strong pedestrian connections and active street edges. Along North Fairfax, the streetscape emphasizes outdoor cafes and connections to the public green space along the Potomac. We've located retail, residential entrance, and public-facing uses to create a lively rhythm similar to what people experience in Old Town on Fairfax. Both Road A and B will serve as key connectors with building entrances and retail placed to support natural pedestrian flow. Next slide, please. At the intersection of North Fairfax and the gateway is the gateway to the entrance of the district. Block B introduces a signature corner. This area is designed to feel welcoming and recognizable. The retail, storefront signages, and architectural detailing help establish a sense of arrival to this active district. Next slide, please. Along North Fairfax, Block B includes retail spaces that support diverse neighborhood serving businesses. The condominium entry and rental lobby, each designed to be visible and safe access to the buildings, and thoughtful placement of entries to support foot traffic and enhance the public realm. Next slide, please. As the Block B comes to the ground, we've actually pulled back the elements there to actually create even more outdoor pedestrian space for the residents of the neighborhood. Next slide, please. This is the entrance to the rental building. From the rail corridor, we've kind of focused on, this talks about just about the rental itself and the entrance to the lobby. It's what is designed to be visible and safe across the access. Next slide, please. So the rental design building of Building B, as you look at this from across the rail corridor towards the rental building, this is the south-facing building. We've created a variation in facade expression to avoid monotony on the facade. The height variety was used to break up the massing of the facade. So the highest point is on the right-hand side, and it drops to the lowest point on the left-hand side there. Which also creates a gateway element where the building meets the ground, creating both a strong anchor to both intersections coming into the site. Retail spaces have been proportioned and inspired by Old Town's historic rhythms, and a mix of storefronts enrich the entire street experience. Next slide, please. As we look at the condo building, from the waterfront, the building really emphasizes sort of the architectural excitement of the site. We wanted to create a dynamic, iconic sloping building at the corner, which has a rich material palette that has a vertical articulation to create sort of the height at the corner here. But we did create a height and variation to create visual interest to the site. The tower sets back and opens up the public realm at the ground floor, as I mentioned earlier, and improves pedestrian circulation and comfort. As you can see, the rooftop terrace that drops down out from the corner there becomes a signature feature and a community asset as far as creating variation of the site. And the retail spaces continue the Old Town and Sprout character as we go along the streets here as well. So in closing, the Block B is designed to be a welcoming, walkable, and architecturally distinctive phase one of this district. It blends new development with familiar neighborhood patterns, strengthens public space, and creates opportunities for local businesses, and residents. And with that, I turn it over to Blake to talk about Block C.
Thank you, Dylan. My name is Blake Middleton, part of the Pandel Architect and the design lead for Block C. Can we go to the next slide, please? Next slide. Um, the main concept here, very similar to Block B, is to have a dynamic and active perimeter around the whole block. And you can see a unique feature to this block which is identified by item B there on the plan, which is this mid-block pedestrian connector, which links from the central plaza to the left over to Road A, Road B on the right. And that pedestrian way does several things. It produces more permeability through this somewhat large block for pedestrians. Second, it actually allows the parking and the service spaces to be located off the streets, which or enhances the amount of peripheral activity, the retail spaces that you can see in the kind of pink color, lobbies in the two shades of yellow, and other aspects of the site. And it opens and bends and folds around in a number of ways. Next, please. I'm going to do a very quick walk around the perimeter for the pedestrian experience. What we see right here is the main entrance at the end of North Royal Street as it comes in diagonally towards this block. And then there's lobby spaces on both sides that are framed by this sort of very classic white double-story warm green color facade that comes down right to the ground. You can see just off to the right there, a little canopy in light color. That is the entryway into the mid-block pedestrian connector. And then as we go to the next slide, please, we're strolling up Road B. Next. And we arrive here at the Esplanade at the beginning of the Vernerf. This shows a kind of setback that's also occurring as the scale of the building begins to, come back down to, just the pedestrian scale. And you can see the tower on the left and the condominium building on the right, which we'll see in more detail in a second. And then next, please, as we move along the Vernerf that you can see here, now the all glazed portion of the condominium tower begins to sort of reveal itself. It is sort of rotated a bit on an angle, anchoring itself in a very strong way into the central square, which you can see on the right, and begins to bend again. If we go to the next slide, please, one can sort of imagine walking around the perimeter of the building, and we arrive at the condominium entrance, which is at a small sort of plaza-like space, which in turn connects to that pedestrian connector that you can see off in the distance on the right. All of that then having retail space from the building, lining that surface too. Next. As we move back, sort of standing back now from the open rail connector plaza park space, excuse me. We're standing roughly on the axis of North Royal Street, and we can see right down towards the intersection of the two streets. Several things going on here. One, the sort of soft cream color frame of the building captures sort of the overall height. It works at the city scale. We're also, using a motif of, very classic proportions that are similar to, let's say, the old town window frames in their proportions. It's kind of very vertically accentuated. And then a stepping down of scale on both sides with these bay windows, another sort of traditional motif that you see in that sort of warm copperish color there. And that happens on both sides of the building and in different ways. Next. And then in contrast to this sort of, L-shaped building facing south towards the old town, as you come around to the riverfront, all of a sudden the building begins to open up. The L shape begins to capture and embrace the condominium tower, which is in a much different facade articulation, which is a series of curvilinear, soft edges of continuous glass opened up with a series of terraces on both sides of it as it sort of orients itself off towards the city, towards Washington, towards the north. Next. And then we can see here, finally, standing back and looking at the composition of both buildings, that Devin was describing this kind of gateway moment that happens at Road B as North Rail comes up to that intersection, really kind of transitioning from the park in the foreground to the stepping up of scale on the buildings on both sides. And then finally, please, and we can see, I hope, soon, next. There we go. Thank you. And then a view from the Vernerf looking back towards the central waterfront plaza on the right, and the Vernerf on the left, and the condominium tower sort of anchoring itself into that plaza. And then finally, next slide, please. We can really get that transition that Simon was talking about before, between the riverfront edge sloping up towards the site and then transitioning to the sort of podium levels, the pedestrian scale, and then stepping up to the more larger city scale of the buildings beyond. And with that, I'll turn it over to Melissa.
Thank you, Blake. Corey, can you go to the next slide, please? And the next one. Great. Okay. In addition to advancing tonight's DSU, in addition to advancing the DSUPs for the first phase of development and all the open spaces you've just heard, we have been working with the city on a tax increment financing, or TIF, proposal to help unlock the project and move it forward. As some of you may know, a TIF is an economic development tool that uses a portion of new future tax revenue generated by a project to fund the upfront costs of public infrastructure and other costs that enable the project. This future tax revenue would not exist but for the new development. This project represents an estimated $2 billion of private investment into this site, and we've proposed entering into an agreement with the city to authorize a $135 million TIF in 2 phases, which represents roughly 6% of the total anticipated development cost. The power plant site, as I'm sure many of you recognize, is highly unique. It requires abatement and deconstruction of the existing plant, environmental remediation of the site, completely new roadway infrastructure, and in addition to all the open space that will be created. As it stands today in its current state, the site is really not generating any meaningful tax revenue for the city, but the new project is expected to produce approximately $770 million in new tax revenue for the city over the term of the TIF. Next slide, please. So how does this all work? A Community Development Authority, or CDA, will be established by an act of City Council. It's established on the site, and the CDA will issue bonds that will help fund components of the project that provide public benefit, and only those components of the project that provide public benefit. The bonds are then repaid by using a portion of the new future tax revenue generated by the project. Essentially, bond investors are helping to fund the creation of these public components, and they're getting paid back by allocating a portion of the future incremental tax revenue that's generated by the project. Very importantly for folks to understand, a TIF is not a grant or other form of subsidy. It doesn't redirect any of the city's existing revenue or budget. And also, as the CDA is issuing the bonds and not the city, this proposal will not impact the city's bond capacity or its rating. So just to recap on the numbers, the total development cost for the project is approximately $2 billion of private investment. The TIF proposal would fund $135 million of public improvements over 2 phases. Our contribution for those same public improvements is $155 million, so our share is a bit larger. Overall, the TIF represents about 6% of the anticipated total development costs, and it will unlock $770 million in new revenue to the city during the term of the TIF. Next slide, please. As folks may know, there are several local examples of where TIFs have been used successfully to catalyze redevelopment in Alexandria and across the region, including the Inova Hospital at Landmark Mall, the Mosaic District, National Harbor, Ballston Quarter, and of course the Wharf in DC. Next. Now I'm going to hand it over to John Newhall, who will talk about deconstruction.
Thank you, Melissa. Hi, everybody. I'm John Newhall. I head up construction here at HRP. So what you're looking at here is a slide that should be familiar if you've attended meetings in the past. This is a sequencing plan. It was developed with our GC partner, as a reminder, Balfour Beatty, who is leading both site logistics and safety on the deconstruction side and vertical side as well. So at a high level, this outlines our approach to deconstruction. It's a phased plan that allows vertical construction to progress concurrently while the deconstruction is still ongoing. The phasing generally moves from south to north, starting with the smaller structures associated with the coal silos and conveyors. There's also, you'll see a small area on the north up against the turbine house in blue, and adjacent to the Pepco switchyard that is a part of our Sequence A as well. Not to get too deep into it, but it allows site access and logistics to flow through our project, so we need to attack that first as well. It's just a little bit of a separation. Sequence B here includes high work on the stacks, precipitators, and the admin building, followed by Sequence C, which focuses on the turbine house, which has one of the longer durations given the infrastructure that's inside of it, which is why it precedes Sequence D at the powerhouse. So in total, we're anticipating a overall duration of about 20 months. Deconstruction abatement will lead the operations. You'll see on site with roughly a 6 to 8 month head start ahead of vertical construction, which will begin at the southern portion of the site on the coal yard. We've aligned this sequencing from a permitting standpoint. So each phase will begin with an abatement permit, then followed by a deconstruction permit once we have clearance letters issued by a third-party hygienist that I'll talk through when we get into the next slide. You can go to that next slide, please. Here. Okay. So what you're seeing here is the deconstruction and abatement mitigation measures that we have in place. And again, this should be a familiar slide if you've been on past meetings with us. So first of all, one of the first things we'll do on site is set up a rodent control plan. That's done before we do any abatement or deconstruction work. Pretty straightforward process there. Both monitoring and bait stations are placed. From a noise control standpoint, we will be abiding by all the local ordinances. We will be doing noise monitoring on site with our partner Balfour Beatty, both at the work site taking place, as well as working with city agencies if extended hours are needed, only when granted from them. Next, vibration monitoring. So this is going to be set up on the perimeter of the site and definitely adjacent to the Pepco switchyard. So while this typically is sufficient, as this will be closest to the work actually taking place, we're also going to evaluate some foundation walls of potential adjacent buildings that we will monitor for this as well. And then the nice thing about this system is it provides real-time data to us, allowing us to adjust the work in the rare case that we do have an exceedance or getting close to threshold amounts. Next is the existing, kind of going hand in hand with that, existing condition surveys. This is a standard here at HRP. As Melissa mentioned, we've deconstructed 5 coal-fired power plants in the past. So, with this, we would identify buildings, units, get in sidewalks, edges of buildings, and we would work with all of our neighbors as a good neighbor, really our good neighbor approach to getting pre-construction surveys in place to ensure that the work that we are doing is going to have no negative impact on your buildings or your units. So next is the dust control. So with this, it's a layered approach. It's both mitigation, kind of two-phase, mitigation and monitoring. Mitigation, water is our best friend in this. It's the primary mitigation method through saturation prior to the work taking place, through water cannon, dust bosses, portable water buffaloes around the site. It's pre-saturation of materials, again, prior to the deconstruction. In addition to that, we're going to have a monitoring plan in place, and this is going to be set up both at the work site with Balfour Beatty and their contractors, as well as around the perimeter of the site. And very similar to the vibration monitoring, this provides us real-time data. In the rare case that there is an exceedance, we stop that work, we adjust the work plan to ensure that there's going to be no cause for concern on any of the activities that were taking place out there. And then the last piece in the abatement approach, pretty straightforward. It's identification of asbestos-containing materials. This is about 99% complete at this point. We've gone in and out and around that facility, identifying regulated materials. This is done by a third-party hygienist. So this abatement work will be carried out by a Virginia licensed contractor within controlled containment areas using, again, appropriate water suppression. A third-party hygienist is going to oversee the work and provide final clearance letters through both visual inspections, wipe sampling, and final air monitoring to confirm that all regulated materials has been removed before the deconstruction can actually proceed. And again, that permitting is abatement permit prior to the demolition permit, which then we can't start that demolition until we have the abatement signed off and a final clearance letter in hand. And we can go to the next slide here. And so finally, just prior to starting any of the deconstruction or earth disturbance, we've been working hand in hand with the City of Alexandria requirements. I'm not going to go through all of them that are listed here, but we've submitted 6 rounds of the infrastructure final site plan and comments back and forth. So this includes demolition sequence by phase that you've seen, dust mitigation plans, noise control plans, regulated material and handling and transport plans, a construction management plan that will identify parking, queuing, roads in it, traffic routes in and out of the site, and then in addition to the worker health and safety plan on site. And as we get closer to deconstruction, we will be back in touch with much more specific deconstruction meetings identified. Obviously, I'm going through things very quickly. When we get into it, ahead of what's called a mid to late 2027 deconstruction is our target right now. And as we get closer to that and we're in the permitting, we will start to have community meetings that are purely focused on the deconstruction activities. And I think from here, I'm going to turn it over to Amelia.
Thank you, John, and thank you everyone for joining. Next slide, please. I'm going to be very brief because I'm the only thing standing between you and the Q&A. We want to get to as many questions as possible. My name is Amelia Alcivar. I lead corporate affairs for HRP Group, and I am a almost 13-year now Old Town resident. So it's great to be doing this in my own backyard. Community engagement is incredibly important. That's why we're here tonight. This is our 19th meeting, as mentioned. In addition to these virtual public meetings, where we try to make them as convenient as possible for as many different people with different schedules to join, we do hold additional forms of community engagement throughout the year and throughout our ownership of the property. For the past 3 years, we've had community site tours. We certainly anticipate doing that again prior to the beginning of the deconstruction and abatement. Had over 600 people come through. We also hold additional meetings, events, and site tours with community organizations, groups, civic associations, neighborhood organizations. So if your group is interested in a briefing and tour, please feel free to contact us via our website, hrpalx.com. We're happy to try to arrange that. And I just wanted to make a note on Simon's presentation that our open space plan, which was so beautifully presented, was informed by over 800 Alexandrians who responded to our open space survey that we conducted around 2 years ago. Next slide. One of our sort of guiding principles at HRP Group at all of our projects is that we want to form partnerships that truly impact the community we're working in. And in this case here at the power plant site in Old Town North, that means leaning into and forming partnerships with organizations that are serving Alexandria, right? And really focus on the local population here versus, regional or statewide. So you probably recognize some familiar logos of organizations that we've partnered with here that are all based in Alexandria, serving Alexandrians. We've invested over $200,000 in nonprofit and workforce development organizations. to ensure that all Alexandrians can benefit from the work that we're going to be doing here at the site very soon. Workforce development is a priority for us, so we have partnered with organizations like Cornerstone Craftsman, Computer Corps, and the Seaport Foundation with planned opportunities to ensure that their participants and other Alexandria residents can take advantage of future job opportunities both during the construction and following in the permanent development. And we also, engage with our neighbors in Old Town North and the civic community, ensuring that we're both providing updates and getting feedback in real time. Next slide. And just a sampling of some of the support we've received, both from community leaders, organizations like our friends at the Friends of the Mount Vernon Trail, and local residents. Where we know there's a lot of excitement to get this project started. We know there's a lot of questions. Look forward to continuing to engage and answer them throughout this public process. And you can see a more full compilation of some of the support to move the approval process forward. If you go to our website, again, hrpalx.com, it's right there, something you can view as a PDF on the website. And I think with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mary Catherine to conclude the meeting and open it up for Q&A.
Thanks, Amelia. That's exactly right. As we've discussed earlier, you can see a summary of how we've reached this point in the darker gray to the left here. Again, we've had a number of community meetings regarding this phase of the development, including presentation to a number of Alexandria's commissions and boards. All of this, though, importantly, is moving us towards a review of these plans by the Planning Commission and the City Council in June. Planning Commission June 2nd, City Council June 13th. Lastly, I do want to say that although if you've been watching a number of these meetings, you've seen my face running these meetings for a really long time. This is going to be my last meeting as part of this community process. I am starting a new job later in this month, but my partner Ken Wire is here. He is also very familiar to people in Old Town North, as he's done a number of projects in Old Town North, and will be a great asset to this team moving forward. But I wanted to let you guys know that. And with that, we can turn it over to the questions. We've gotten a number of questions both before the meeting and in the Q&A so far. So we're going to start with a question that's being asked by a number of people. Mary Harris asked it herself, saying it is the most asked question she gets in Old Town North. But it was also asked by several people in the pre-questions. When is the power plant going to be demolished, and when will the site be ready for development? And so for that timing question, Melissa, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Mary Catherine, and thank you for your questions. There's a lot of great questions here, so we're going to do our best to get to all of them tonight. The answer is 2027. As John Newhall mentioned, we will start the deconstruction by the middle towards the end of next year. I think there's some other questions in here about what our remaining hurdles are. We do have to go through the final site plan review process with city staff and get building permits. So we need building permits, obviously, to go vertical. We'll also need a permit to do the deconstruction. So there's some engineering and permitting work that will happen in the lead up to that. But by the middle or the end of next year, you will see the process all starting. And as John mentioned, we will go from deconstruction like straight into vertical development of this first phase, blocks B and C. So I know there have been a lot of people working a long time to see this site redeveloped. A lot of folks in the community want to see it happen, and we're happy to say that it will be starting next year.
Thanks, Melissa. So there were also questions about construction vehicles and worker parking. There were several of those. John, would you mind talking about the construction plan again? I know you've just gone through it in your slide, but just to reiterate, what's the process before you even begin construction?
Yeah, yep, yeah, absolutely. So it's important to clarify just the initial phase here is going to be abatement and deconstruction and that preparation work. So there'll be limited visibility early, and then the project will start to ramp up. As we move into that phase, again, we're going to be holding dedicated community meetings, focus on that. But in terms of the construction logistics, we're working closely with Balfour to develop a comprehensive construction management plan by the phase. So there'll be one for abatement, one for deconstruction. In the early phases, there may be some limited on-site parking that you see during deconstruction. However, our overall goal is to minimize any impact to the surrounding streets. We plan to utilize nearby garages. That's a part of Balfour's construction management plan, or you'll hear a lot when we say CMP, and off-site parking options wherever possible. And we're going to be encouraging the trade partners to carpool to further reduce traffic and congestion in and around the site. And
Thanks,
again, but
John.
again, these will all be formally outlined in reviews as a part of the different phases of the construction management plan. There'll be one for deconstruction, one for vertical as we have block B, vertical as we have block C.
Awesome. Thank you. We're next going to turn it to some transportation questions. We received some in advance, but also on the Q&A so far. I'm going to start with one from Bill Dupuy about the transportation analysis and when it was run and does it need to be rerun. So I'm going to turn that over to Daniel Solomon from Grove Slate.
Hi, Mary Catherine. Great question. So the analysis was first formally submitted as part of the CDD, and a multimodal transportation study was submitted in April of 2022. It was since advanced with an updated DSUP transportation studies in 2025. In terms of timing, the analysis that was conducted is forward-looking. It does incorporate project background growth, planned developments, anticipated network improvements, etc. So it does reflect future conditions rather than just focusing at a point in time back in 22 when the study was conducted. We're also operating within the approved CDD framework. So the city allowed us to build on the original multimodal transportation study as long as we were within 5 years and staying consistent with what was approved as part of the CDD, which is the case with these DSUPs. I will also note that there is a commitment to update the analysis again halfway through vertical development using the most current data at that time, as well as we'll be back in front of the city with future DSUPs, scoping multimodal transportation studies for each of subsequent blocks.
That's great. There were a couple of questions, Daniel, about accessing into the site. So let me read that one. It's like elaborate on how visitors and residents will access and egress from the site.
Absolutely. So PRGS will include a new internal roadway network within the project site. This is in line with the Old Town North Small Area Plan, and the network's going to connect to existing road network at both Slater's Lane, North Royal Street, and North Fairfax Street. That's just in terms of overall connectivity. Specifically in terms of bicycle connectivity, the site is uniquely positioned to take advantage of the adjacency of the Mount Vernon Trail, as Simon showed earlier with those beautiful renderings, as well as local bike networks. These are fantastic amenities, as well as gaps in the existing bicycle network are going to be filled. We understand that there are barriers to east-west mobility, such as the George Washington Memorial Parkway, and tracks further west means that there is a lot of potential to be unlocked at the site. So what the project will be doing is it's going to extend the local bicycle network by providing on-site, on-street bicycle facilities, which connect the project directly to the local street network, and then providing bicycle lanes on Slater's Lane as an extension of the existing facilities that are on Slater's Lane west of GW Memorial Parkway, completing that local connection. These improvements will complement city planned improvements, including a connection to the Potomac Avenue Trail from East Abingdon Drive westwards, as well as trail improvements along East Abingdon between Slater's Lane and the multi-use trail to the south.
Thanks, Daniel. We do have a hand raised. Kristen Reed, I also saw you had put a question into the Q&A. So if you want to, are you going to ask that same question or do you have a different question? You have to unmute yourself.
Same question, so we can just handle it with what I typed in.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Christian's question, John, was about the anticipated abatement and deconstruction sequence and whether or not we had a map that also shows where the new buildings are located in order to be able to see where those buildings will end up on that map. So I don't know that we do at this time, Kristen, but John, are you aware if we have anyone like that?
Yeah, I mean, we had in terms of that being overlaid with the deconstruction plan.
Right.
I mean, I think that's something that we could we could follow up with for sure as we're, we're working through that logistically with Balfour to make sure that we can build those, that those first two buildings concurrently with the deconstruction. So I think in future meetings, we can start to outline the buildings on that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mayor Catherine, I would also
yep.
point out, we'll put this deck up on our website, but I would also point out that some of the slides in the earlier part of the presentation, which Kristen may have missed, show the existing city around us with the footprints of the new blocks.
Thank you. The first question after that we got in the Q&A section was what stormwater best management practices are going to be used on the site. So I'm going to start with this, but then I'm going to turn it over to Linda Toth. So currently there are actually no stormwater protections on the site because the site hasn't been had new development in a long period of time since we've gotten new stormwater regs. What we are going to be including as part of this process is it's required that we use significant BMPs on the site in order to capture stormwater and hold it for a period of time so that certain nutrients can be removed from that water. And that is happening all over the site, both on the roofs, but also on the ground for the new roadway network. The city's requirements are actually ones that, with new development, make the stormwater runoff much better because we have to capture that water so it can't just free flow as it does now straight into the Potomac. It will be captured before it does that. But then Linda, I don't know if you wanted to talk any more about the stormwater stuff that's on the roofs for sustainability purposes.
Sure. Yeah, we added as part of the coordinated sustainability strategy some of the voluntary commitments that were added into that plan. We're focusing on the impacts of stormwater. So there are bioretention planters planned for the roadways to help with some of those extreme precipitation events when those larger amounts of rainfall happen. And then as design progresses in future phases, some goals around making sure native plants, right, plants with deeper roots that are going to be able to absorb larger amounts of water are going to be planned for the site and optimized in the right areas based on different locations throughout the site. And then that will supplement those green roofs that Mary Catherine was talking about.
Thanks, Linda. I wanted to, since we're talking about water, I just wanted to answer one of the questions that came in advance of the meeting about the pump house that's referenced. Is this structure related at all to the failed pump house separately proposed for Waterfront Park? And the answer is absolutely not. They're not related at all. It is a pump house, was a pump house for the existing facility, the electrical generating station. It's not going to be utilized as a pump house in the future. It will be an adaptive use that I don't think is known at this time is going to be designed so that you saw him in Simon's presentation in terms of what the pump house will look like in the after condition adjacent to the new boardwalk. And so the HRP will be working towards what they want to do in that space as part of the later phases. I wanted to turn it to environmental questions that we've received. There's a question about whether or not the project is within the voluntary remediation program. Juliana Connolly, did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yes, the whole property has been entered into the voluntary remediation program a few years ago, so we're a couple of years in. To date, we've completed sort of the initial phases of what you do under the voluntary remediation program, really related to site characterization. So what I mean by that is collection of soil and groundwater samples, and then chemical analysis of those samples to understand what we would refer to as the nature and extent of contamination. So both what chemicals are present in the soil and groundwater and where they're located. So that information is documented in a site characterization report that's available on our website. We will do some additional sampling as the deconstruction proceeds because there's sort of limited access to areas close to the building or beneath the building. So we'll do some additional sampling as that proceeds. But yes, the entire site is entered into the voluntary remediation program, and the reports that we've completed so far under the VRP are available on our website.
Thanks, Juliana.
Mm-hmm.
There were several questions about the designs for the project and whether or not they are in keeping with the design of Old Town itself. Melissa, did you want to take that question, a particular one about why no red brick?
Sure. Well, we certainly understand people have different perspectives on design, and maybe I'll start with a little bit of background that some I'm sure are very aware of, and others may be newer to Alexandria or newer to Old Town. Because I think there were some questions about the scale of the development, and I think it's important context for people to understand that, the power plant was closed down in 2012. And after that, the city undertook a 2+ year community planning process that culminated in the Old Town North Small Area Plan, which is a planning document essentially upzoning and revising some of the characteristics and criteria for new development in Old Town North. And on this site, it was always envisioned that there would be over 2 million square feet of development. There are substantial setbacks that we're dealing with, both at the waterfront, where we have the resource protection area. So we're set back a certain distance from the waterfront, as you may expect, and development can't occur on the waterward side of that line. Additionally, and I know there have been some questions in the chat as well about the existing substation. The substation is another existing element that will remain. Pepco has no plans to decommission it, but we do have the ability to screen it, as you heard Simon talk about in the open space portion of the presentation. But there are also some transmission lines that come out of that substation that need to be considered with how we develop the site and where we can place buildings versus roads and those sorts of things. So all of that has kind of created a context where you do have a development that's more of what we would call the mid-rise style of development, somewhere between 10 and 15 stories. The buildings that you saw tonight are mostly 12 to 14 story buildings. And so that's sort of the context that we have in terms of what is being planned here. We have tried to make the development more contextual on the side that is facing the existing area of Old Town North, which I would also offer, Old Town North is not exactly Old Town and is not exactly King Street. There is a diversity of different types of architecture here. We are very focused, as you've probably gleaned from tonight's presentation, on what that ground plane experience is for people. So, Old Town has a wonderful pedestrian environment that it creates, and that is a big focus of how we plan to develop the site in terms of the architecture, but also the uses that will be here, and making it very walkable. You heard us talk about the Wooner, right, which is really a pedestrian priority street. And so while the site is clearly not historic, right, in terms of its time of its genesis, we are building something today, in 2020s. We do think that we are providing many elements that will help it blend into the existing fabric of Old Town.
Thanks, Melissa. There were also a couple of questions about the status of Block A as part of this process. Do you want to provide information on what's happening with Block A? It was included previously, but is not included in our plans at this time.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to answer that one. I think as folks who are familiar with the plan may know, Block A, it's just on the south side of Fairfax Street. As Fairfax Street comes in to the development from Old Town North, it's got a very unique sort of triangular shaped footprint. It's pretty small. It's about 14,000 square feet. So that unique footprint is going to give rise to a unique building. And one of the things that we've figured out as we've moved through the phase one approvals is that we really do believe we need to find the right user for that building. So we've been working with AEDP and others on identifying potential users to create a build-to-suit building in that location. It is considered to be a spot on the site where we'll be able to continue that Fairfax Street Arts Corridor into the site, really at the gateway of the project. So we are looking for those kinds of users. And we think once we've identified someone to take that space, that then we will advance the actual building there through the final DSUP process. In the meantime, though, we are looking at ways to activate Block A on an interim basis when Blocks B and C are delivered with community focus, kind of active uses that could include, maybe a rotating arts user, like some kind of revolving public art display, maybe some pop-up retail, helping local retailers, reach a new customer base, an F&B, seasonal use, or maybe a games component. So it is still very much top of mind. We are pursuing, we're trying to find a specific user for that space, but we do intend to activate it in conjunction with the opening of phase one.
Thanks. Daniel, I might go back to you. There's a couple of questions on the specific improvements to the GW Parkway at Slater's, if you might run through those. And then there were a couple of questions about separation of pedestrians from bikes and how that's influenced on the site. So if you could take that, that'd be great.
100%. Okay. So in terms of the plan changes to the intersection of GW Memorial Parkway and Slater's Lane, there are a number of improvements planned as part of this project to that intersection. Sidewalks, curb ramps, and crosswalks are going to be brought up to standard, where currently they are quite substandard. Southbound West Abingdon will ever so slightly be widened to add some additional vehicular capacity there. That'll also be accompanied by restriping and overall signal timing throughout the intersection to match expected demand and be able to process vehicles better in a more efficient manner through the intersection than there are today, where today a lot of vehicles do get stuck in the minor nodes at that complex intersection. We've been working with the city to come up with an operational plan for that intersection that just does a better job, even under existing conditions to do that. The project will also be funding adaptive control signal upgrades at the intersection, which will allow the city to monitor and adjust signal timing in a more efficient manner than they're able to today. So just an overall improvement to that intersection, regardless of kind of the actual physical improvements that the project is making itself. And finally, and then pedestrian improvements. So apologies, I forgot to note those in my previous answer. So one of the fundamental design principles that the transportation plan and just the project itself had was to design for people of all ages and abilities. A lot of pedestrian-friendly elements went into that. That includes controlled crosswalks at all intersections, curb extensions, timing and phasing strategies to balance prioritization of modes at those intersections, promotion of safety and Vision Zero strategies, the WUNRF, multiple multi-use paths that were discussed previously, ample sidewalks throughout the site, as well as on public streets being upgraded, activation of building frontages, as well as green and programmable open space. So a very, very pedestrian-friendly project, as well as making improvements on and off site.
Thank you. And we had a couple of questions about there's some existing work that's being done on the Mount or near or adjacent to the Mount Vernon Trail, and what the timing of that was and what is it. So Michelle, do you want to go through that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So that work along the south side of the site is actually related to the Park Service's emergency shoreline work along the Mount Vernon Trail. We were working with their contractor to provide access through our site to that segment of the trail, which is really challenging to reach. The redevelopment is actually one of, benefits that segment of the trail in terms of reaching it for trail users. All this work was spearheaded by the Park Service. We did send notice out to immediate neighbors as a courtesy. And as a result, they've been able to, you've seen those boulders and other riprap on the trail. So you'll see that. And then in the next coming weeks, another Park Service contractor has reached out to us for a very brief access of the trail along the north side. So that again is just limited to access through our property. There's nothing related to the redevelopment. And we have asked that all storage and parking be located on our site to minimize impacts to the neighbors.
Thanks, Michelle. We did have a question about whether or not there'll be underground parking. And yes, the entire site is envisioned to have an underground parking garage it actually goes under the private streets. So yes, underground parking will be utilized. And I know that we have some outstanding questions, but we are at 7:30 and we're over the time that was allotted for the meeting, but we wanted to make sure we got to as many of these questions as we could. But please remember, any and all questions that we didn't get to will be answered in writing, and it will be posted on the HRPALX.com website with all of those answers. So if you didn't get your question answered today, it will be answered online. And I just would like to say personally for myself, I'm really excited to see this project coming to this phase. I think it's very important that we get through the entitlement process for these first two blocks because this is a transformational project for the neighborhood. And I was really excited to have been able to participate in it for these last 5 years. And I can't thank HRP enough for trusting me to guide you through this process. So I'm really excited that these hearings are going to take place June 2nd and June 13th. So thanks, everyone.